news and news breaks with the same speed.
Sometimes you find the news, and sometimes the news finds you.
All stations can keep up. At Adaba FM, we'll not only give you news at the speed of nanosecond, but we'll also break it down with up-to-date analysis, informed opinions, and distinct professionalism. That's why you love us. Adaba 88.9 FM, your go-to station.
It's midday. Good afternoon. I am Olabisi Olani Oluwasegun with Global News. In the news, UN peacekeepers uncover mass graves in Democratic Republic of Congo. New Zealand Prime Minister threatens to stand down. Lives lost in Peru as demonstrations continue.
This is the news.
Now the news in detail. The Bauchi State Police Command has arrested 9 suspects for allegedly robbing and other offences in the Bauchi metropolis. This is contained in a statement by the command spokesman, SP Ahmed Wakil, in Bauchi. He said that operatives of the command apprehended the suspects on January 15 in connection with robbery and attacks on residents of the area. The suspects are Sani Mohammed, 27, Suleiman Mohammed, 19, Imrana Abbas, 19, Ibrahim Mohammed, 18, Hassan Al-Hassan, 18, and Babangida Salisu, 20. Ahmed said the police recovered 2 matches, 3 knives, and 4 mobile phones from the suspects. The suspects, armed with weapons, unleashed terror on innocent citizens and looted. He said that operatives of the command recovered a locally made revolver with 3 7.62 millimeters live ammunition from the suspects. United Nations peacekeepers in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have found dozens of bodies in mass graves. The discovery comes after a series of attacks by armed groups in the region of Ituri. A United Nations spokesman, Farhan Haq, said the bodies of 42 people, including women and children, had been discovered in the village of Nyamamba and a further 7 men in the village of Mbogi. The peacekeepers had launched patrols in the area after reports of attacks by Codeco militias. Its fighters are mainly from the Lendo farming community, which has long been in conflicts with Hema herders. Kenyan Foreign Minister Alfred Mutua says there are nationals in the diaspora brewing illicit alcohol in Arab countries where it is not allowed. He was responding to concerns about some Kenyans facing difficulties, including reports of abuse of people working in the Middle East. Mutua said Kenyans doing illegal activities were undermining the government's efforts in dealing with issues of welfare for its citizens abroad. He said he found the situation not as bad as it sounds when he initially visited Saudi Arabia soon after being appointed a minister in the country. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said there is no accident at war time after 14 people died in a helicopter crash in the capital, Kyiv. Interior Minister denies Monastyrski died alongside several colleagues. Ukraine has not claimed Russian involvement, but Mr. Zelensky told the World Economic Forum in Davos the tragedy was a consequence of the war. Mr. Zelensky also used his video address to urge allies to quickly send more weapons before new Russian offensives. Berlin has reportedly been unwilling to send the vehicles unless the United States commits to provide its own Abrams battle tanks. The head of the NATO military alliance said at Davos that Ukraine could expect to receive more advanced support, heavier weapons, and more modern weapons. Thank you for staying tuned. For news updates and live streaming, visit our website www.adaba889.fm or download Adaba FM app on Google Play Store. You can be part of us on our social media platforms www.facebook.com/AdabaFM 88.9 on Facebook, at Adaba 889FM on Instagram and Twitter, and Adaba FM TV on YouTube. You can also provide us information via email, newsroom@adaba889.fm. And now to the rest of the news. Jacinda Ardern has announced she will quit as New Zealand Prime Minister ahead of this year's election, saying She no longer has enough in the tank to lead. The shocking announcement comes as polling indicates the party faces a difficult path to re-election on 14 October. Ms. Ardern said she had taken time to consider her future over the summer break, hoping to find the heart and energy to go on in the role. Meanwhile, Ms. Ardern was stepped down by 7th of February. Dozens of lives have been lost during weeks of demonstrations after former leader Pedro Castillo was ousted. The deaths come ahead of a large-scale protest planned in the capital. Journalist Neil Giardino told newsmen that anger indignation made its way to Lima as thousands of indigenous people from the highlands descended on the capital. Meanwhile, demonstrators want Ms. Boluarte to step aside and call fresh elections, and for Mr. Castillo, a left-wing predecessor, to be released from custody. He has been investigated on charges of rebellion and conspiracy. He denies all the accusations, insisting that he is still the country's legitimate president. Ms. Boluarte has resisted calls to step down and issued a call earlier this week to Peruvians to ensure their protests were peaceful. In our sports, Spanish world number 2 Rafael Nadal said he would be sidelined for up to 8 weeks after suffering a left hip flexor injury during his shock exit from the Australian Open. The 36-year-old wrote on Twitter that scans showed a moderate muscle tear. The projected timeline puts his participation at the ATP 1000 Indian Wells and Miami events in March in doubt, which would see him plunge down the rankings. Nadal will more likely target being ready for the clay court season in mid-April, leading into the French Open in May, where he will be chasing a 15th title. The defending champion slipped out of the Australian Open on Wednesday to 65th ranked American Mackenzie McDonald in the second round, his worst Grand Slam results in 7 years. Relatives of Nepal plane crash victims decry slow autopsy. Grieving relatives of the Nepal plane crash victims are now growing impatient as they wait for the authorities to conduct autopsies and give them their loved ones' bodies for burial. The Yeti Airlines flight with 72 on board plummeted into a gorge while in approach to the newly opened Pokhara International Airport in the foothills of the Himalayas. There were no survivors. A heartbroken Madan Kumar Jaiswal, one of those who lost their loved ones in the crash, said it had been 4 days after the incident, yet no one attended to them. He also said he wanted the post-mortem to be done quickly so the families can receive the bodies of their loved ones. A police official at the rescue site said identifying bodies and accounting for all 72 people on board has been difficult. He also said they would continue to search for the last person until the hospital test showed all 72 bodies in the unfortunate incident. And now to end global news, a recap of our top stories. United Nations peacekeepers in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have found dozens of bodies in mass graves. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced she will quit as New Zealand Prime Minister ahead of this year's election. And we also told you that dozens of lives have been lost during weeks of demonstrations after former leader Pedro Castillo was ousted. That's Global News. It was edited by Patience Ibe. I'm Olabisi Olani Yoluwasegun. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.